Not Multiplayer. I'm Honeyshuckleex.
I'm Zackwad Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz.
Today we're going to be talking about Outer Wilds soundtracks.
Woo! Sorry.
I will just say right off the bat that there's a lot of times in Outer Wilds where it's honestly kind of a quiet game. Just walking around between places. Very, very atmospheric.
Despite the fact you can't breathe most of that atmosphere.
True, you can't.
Or there is no atmosphere.
Yeah, depending on the planet.
Yeah, you can't literally breathe figurative atmosphere. That's not gonna go great for you. Bring your spacesuit, please.
Then again, who does not have a moment where, oh, shoot, you did some tricky maneuver to land on a planet, so excited to do the thing you're gonna do, jump out of the ship and... But that's for another time, for another episode. But in all honesty, let's tip our hats to Andrew Pralo, I believe is how you say his name.
I think so.
It's an amazing soundtrack that has existed since the game was, in beta. I mean, all the examples I've ever seen of just janky graphics of just the brainchild that became Outer Wilds, the soundtrack already existed in as much detail in some cases as now. So, just amazing that I wouldn't be surprised at all if some of the feel, environment, and visuals were inspired by the soundtrack that was created to go along with this project. Just, mwah. I'm hard-pressed to think of a soundtrack that surpasses this one in emotional impact. You know, I mean, they're ones that parallel it. There are lots of good soundtracks out there, but I can't think of one that surpasses this one. You guys?
I can think of some moments where, yeah, that's boom, that's the emotional impact. I never thought of it that way, because, I saved my pitting of competitive thought for my tier lists, so that's not something I'd prepared for this conversation.
Well, I'm not saying it's a competition. I'm talking about just deep emotional experiences that you can't even tell that they were made by the soundtrack because the soundtrack is so integral and immersed into the experience that you can't separate the two. That's how I feel about not every song in Outer Wilds, but the three we're going to talk about specifically, absolutely. They're so intertwined into the narrative and into just the emotional, I'll say, vibe, the aesthetic, whatever, of Outer Wilds that just, it's mind-blowing, and it really, I'm finding hard to articulate, which is funny doing a podcast. It's well, if you don't articulate it, nobody's going to know a damn thing you're talking about, so you better find the words. Sound effects only podcast. No, thank you. Okay.
Well, I was curious about the idea, but I'm pretty sure we've already just heard the peak of the sound effects only podcast, so there's no point in it anymore.
Okay.
I stand corrected. Now there's no point to it.
And I was just going to say, okay, now we've proven that might be a thing worth exploring, but not this time. Not at this time. Okay, so now that we've sidetracked ourselves enough, do we need to... Well, you're here. If you play Outer Wilds...
Outer Wilds is a game that people tell you should not be spoiled, and there is a reason for that, so go at your own risk. Play the game.
Because we will be talking about deep emotional moments, but not really too many spoilers for gameplay, I don't think. But whatever.
I might talk about the ending in my part, is the thing.
Okay, well, there we go. So yeah, take care of yourselves. You've been warned. Just go play. So anyway, the first thing we wanted to talk about is where you start, and the home feeling that you get with the Timber Hearth theme. And I've talked about this in a few other episodes, especially last season, but the Timber Hearth theme is very near and dear to my heart. Even now when I'm not actively playing Outer Wilds anymore, just playing it occasionally for thought-inducing stuff and kind of fact-checking is why I've been playing lately. And whenever I've had too much, I just want to go to Timber Hearth, and I want to watch the sunrise, and I want to listen to the Timber Hearth theme play. And to me, I honestly can't imagine watching a sunrise without that theme recurring in my head. the sunrise now makes the beginning of the Timber Hearth theme play in my head. I hope to never escape it because I love the song so much. And I was just listening to it right before we got in here, and I can literally feel my blood pressure drop as I lean in into the song. As you know, it evokes for me a feeling of home as the place you're always welcome, the place that you can always come back to, where your roots are. It just evokes all of that comfortable feeling of, yeah, there's a lot out there, but you can always return home.
There's also like a good bit of, like, this genre of music kind of feels a little bit underexplored in video games sometimes. Like, this is a little bit of country comfort, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very good example of that kind of theme.
Just amidst, all the hardship and chaos of being where you are, stuck in time, you can come back to Timber Hearth and it just feels like home.
You can remember a time when you didn't know that everything was going to end. You can remember a time when you were innocent and naive in that way. And unlike in regular life, where once your glass ceiling of knowledge has been broken, it's broken forever and you can't ever go back. You can't ever go back to the way things were. And in all honesty, for our hatchling protagonist, they can't ever go back either. They carry the knowledge with them that they've gained through the time loops. But they can still sit with all of their Hearthian family and just experience as much of the next 3 days. Not getting into the time weirdness again.
Yeah, see our time episode for more on that.
3 days, asterisk.
Yeah. With them and just still have that. Even in the face of everything else changing. It just feels like safety after being stressed and lost. And for me, it's a reset. Every time I was seriously playing, like I've said before, every time I get so stressed out and need to quit, I wouldn't just quit playing. I would go and spend an entire loop on Timber Hearth and just listen to the song over and over again and recenter myself and dissipate some of the adrenaline that I had built up through whatever challenges I was facing. And it was kind of a good reminder to bring back into my life that you can do that you can find the places that feel like home and visit them, be a different kind of song, a different kind of setting. Just do that for myself and recenter before I have to go off and face whatever challenges still lay before me. That recentering is a really positive tool. And for me, that's what the Timber Hearth theme feels like.
I gotta say, as like somebody who was already a big fan of this game by the time I introduced my mom to it, it's just to see some part of this thing that I loved so dearly move somebody so deeply was just... I have my own sentimentality about that particular theme song, I will tell you that much.
And how would you describe it? Do you have words for it, or is it just facial expressions and sound effects?
Yeah, I don't... Fortunately, I really just don't seem to have the words for it.
And that's okay. It's like that's one of the things that music does, and video games can too, is give you thoughts and feelings that defy articulation. They're immersive experiences that you can just kind of vaguely hint around with other people who have also experienced it, and they'll get it. You can hint at things, and it's just like, yeah, right, just like that. And they get it. But it defies articulation. And that's one of the beauties that a really well done soundtrack or a really done immersive experience, or in this case, those combined, just elevate your thoughts about it, elevate your feelings about it. And it's just chef's kiss. And I know this is a weird episode probably to listen to because so much of what we're talking about is defying articulation. Oh well, if you get it, you get it. And I'm so glad that I finally got to share in the experience with you two. And I don't mind that it took so long, because then I got to give it my full attention.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, the point about having a home base
is that there's people that means home?
Sure.
There's places that... If one place is home, that means there's places that aren't home, right?
Yeah. True. So, what about those people who aren't home? Would you call them travelers, maybe?
Yeah. The game does. Why wouldn't we? The soundtrack does. Why also wouldn't we?
If you hadn't picked up already, that's the song I'm going to be talking about. And it's kind of unique in the game for a couple of reasons. One being that this is like a diegetic music. We've talked about this before, but it's music that has a source like in universe. It's not just being heard by the player, it's being heard by the character. And the other part being that it's also like very dynamic. You have like this item called like the signal scope that allows you to pick up sound frequencies from very far away, and so you can pick up parts of this song from very far away from the people who are playing them, meaning you can kind of mix and match different parts of the song together if you can line them up properly.
Which is easier said than done.
Yeah, if I recall, it's like the first time I ever actually heard that happen in-game was from inside of the interloper.
Yeah, it goes out far enough that you can just listen and then they'll all just line up. There's an achievement for that.
There is. But Travelers also ends up being the main recurring theme of the game.
Yeah, so like, when you boot up the game and you hear that title sequence, that's a version of Travelers that's more... actually, I don't know how to describe that.
Run it into that articulation problem again.
Yeah, it's more together, clearly, because it's a title sequence, right? Like, it's not like it's going to adapt to what you're doing or anything. But something that really sticks out to me about this song is, like I said, it's diegetic, so there's people who are actually playing this song, and you get to meet all of them. They're Hearthians who have gone out to space before you. They have more experience in this regard, and their themes that they're playing just kind of feel as though they just tie into all that experience. Like, for example, on Giant's Deep, you've got Gabbro who plays, like, some people call it, like, a flute. I don't know, but it's
generally referred to as a horn. It's kind of a nondescript...
It's a wind instrument of some regard.
I don't know. It seems like the kind of instrument where there's some points where which family it fits into gets a bit murky. But we know that this one, by virtue of being able to hear it, it's got some real strong bass frequencies on it.
Yeah, so, like, it really fits with, like, Gabbro's really chill vibe. Like, they just like to sit back and watch everything go by. They are there, and they are okay with that being, like, support role, if they participate at all.
Substantial, but understated.
And then you have the drums played by Chert, and Chert is a very anxious individual, like, pretty actively observing their surroundings and engaging, and you can just feel that energy with that performance. There's so much going on with the drum track.
There is, and it also suits most of the records that you find of Cherts throughout the world are scientific observations. They are one of the more science-minded among Outer Wilds ventures. Among the travelers, Chert's the one who's doing the science work.
Mm-hmm. And as, like, the loop goes on, you can see them get progressively more and more panicked, and I feel so sorry for Chert.
It's like Gabbro knows about the situation because they're in the time loop. Chert knows about the situation because they cannot not notice it.
Yeah. It's really sad. A little bit aside from the point there, but I feel like you can read a lot into these characters simply by the tracks that are associated with them, and those are, like, some of my examples. If you want to hear the other ones, I can, but I'm already going on for a little while here.
Because it is representative of each. I'm having a hard time thinking about Rybex. Rybex, the Hearthian traveler who's on Brittle Hollow.
And has the banjo.
Right.
Which is in harmony with the whistle.
Right. Which is Esker.
Yeah.
Esker on the Adel Rock, which is Timberhearth's moon.
Yeah, so, like, Esker's got, like, the whistle, which is a very... Like, I've considered it a very experienced senior kind of perspective. Like,
Well, and they're also carrying the melody that everything else builds off of.
Yeah, and they do so without even an instrument.
Yeah.
Well, they are the instrument.
Yep.
Instrumental. And how I kind of see it is, like, Ryback is a little bit, well, more reserved and cautious, and playing harmony kind of plays into that, I feel. Like, not doing this alone, referencing a more guiding force in the song. That's a way you could read into that. And then if we want to talk about Feldspar is like the harmonica, and that is like one of the most portable instruments. Like, you can just slip that into your pocket and just go, and it's so fitting. I think it's an excellent choice for the character to play.
Especially since the character is so physically small.
Yeah.
The thing with the harmonica is, like, there's a lot of sounds it can make fairly easily that are, not afraid to take up some sonic space. And it's like, being able to make a clear, bold statement sounds pretty Feldspar to me.
Yeah. And, like, when you put them all together, it sounds a bit like this. There is a piano in this track that I didn't talk about. And that's because part of the culmination of this theme is that you get to hear it at the end of the game. Like, drawing on all of the experiences together, and, like, I feel like just there's so much meaning to be gathered in the fact that you can't end this game alone in itself that is extremely powerful. And if you learn enough about the Nomai, if you go to the Quantum Moon, you can bring Solanum, a Nomai, with you to the final area. And, like, she can also join you. And she brings the piano, which is played off of, like, the same translation device that they seem to carry with them. Or, not translation, inscribing device? It's weird. I don't understand how the Nomai, like, really communicate very well. Do they only speak in writing? Do they have a verbal language?
And that might be they don't when they're in their spacesuits.
Well, just Solanum identified you as an alien immediately, so figured writing was more likely to actually be able to communicate something. Kind of think of it as, like, you can't actually guarantee another species is going to be able to hear your voice physically.
Which is something that is not really talked about very much or mentioned, but, is...
A Nomai might think of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Nomai are very curious and thoughtful from what we've seen of their culture.
I mean, by all means, how do we know Solanum wasn't trying to talk to us during that and it didn't work? Because we just couldn't hear it.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, lots of, like, deer make high-pitched sounds, and they're not deer, they're goats, but who knows? Maybe goats also make high-pitched noises we can't hear.
These would be space goats anyway, so, once you're into space goats, all bets are off.
This has been another installment of fascinating Outer Wilds questions we don't actually need answers to.
Oh my gosh, the volumes of books we could fill up with those.
Yeah, out of context game lore questions does sound like a very fun book. Anyway, piano. I think it's another, like, excellent choice to make a non-Hearthian bring this kind of sound to the song, because from, like, the Hearthian technology that we can see, a piano would be next to impossible to bring with you on your journeys. Like, we're not talking, like, hi, for your space trip, what would you like incorporated into your spaceship? I would like a piano, please.
Well, let's make you one out of sticks and rubber bands.
And when it comes to a physical piano, it's like, as I've talked about with one of my more music friends, it's just like, technically speaking, it's a string instrument, but that's only technically. It doesn't play like a string instrument at all. It's just an instrument with strings in it.
It's string meets percussion.
Right, no, I've heard it categorized as a percussion instrument. with strings.
Yeah, and like percussive strings, but the thing you interface with is keys. All that stuff's supposed to be happening behind the scenes most of the time, so it's a very elaborate instrument with a very distinctive sound.
And so having like this advanced species being able to just create a piano sound just shows how more advanced the Nomai are. And I mean, we can create like digital piano sounds, but this is probably like extremely cool to the Hearthians.
Yeah, we have no evidence of musical synthesis at all in Hearthians, and yeah, music sequencing just seems to be a feature of Solanum's,
Talking stick.
Sure.
Yeah, that works, But yeah, it like all of these elements come together and it weaves such a beautiful piece that transcends cultures. And then it gets compounded on again in the DLC, and like I'm
So yeah, both in its implementation and the very sounds of its instruments, is like, song is, a characteristic piece for the game and just like one big auditory metaphor.
Well, absolutely. I think it is the unifying factor of the entire game in a lot of ways is that piece. That's why its themes are recursive. They repeat over and over and build on each other in different ways and in different parts of the game.
Yeah, because you're also gonna like hear this a lot if you like use your signal scope to help you with navigation, because sometimes if you don't know where a planet is, you might pull out your signal scope and go like, okay, where is it? If you're not gonna like just lock onto it from your ship, that's one way you could find where something is to travel to. So you're gonna hear the music and you'll know where you're going.
Maybe that would be a good tip to use if you happen to knock the deep space satellite out of orbit and you can't use your ship anymore for that.
Oh yeah, that would work, wouldn't it?
It would. It never occurred to me. Might have been helpful, but
Oh, it's just...
I misunderstood how small that satellite was, okay? I thought it was much further away. The first few times I went to find it.
It's okay, we all mess up sometimes.
It's very indicative of the Outer Wilds experience. Accidents happening in space.
Side note to all of this is playing Outer Wilds makes me so much more impressed with what human beings have actually been able to do in space travel. When you really think about all the variables they're up against and how hard it is and how unforgiving space really is, it is a miracle that we have done any of the things that we have done. I'm just going to say that.
I mean, it's like you have things like the match velocity, the autopilot, but it's like you need to use both those tools conscientiously. They're very powerful, but you can still get yourself thrown into the sun if you don't know how to use them right.
Yeah, I was making memes yesterday, and like Giggleclex here did witness me almost fall into the sun with autopilot, and I had to correct myself. And I was very scared because I would have had to do another 2 loops to fix this problem.
Yes. But that's okay. So anyway, speaking of
loops.
You hear that? Having trouble thinking of how to follow that up.
Well, the one thing I think of is we're obviously talking about the end times. And if you don't know that, what are you doing here? But as a counterpoint to how the Timber Hearth theme lowers my blood pressure and chills me out, this one makes me tense as all hell.
Yeah. It's like there's just something about this theme. It's the theme of, sort of the alarm going off telling you it's time to come back to the beginning of the time loop. It's the theme of watching the world you know slip through your fingers again and again. And eventually, as you start to unravel, the true gravity of what's going on here, it's the theme of the inevitability of it all. The sun of your solar system is coming to the end of its natural lifespan, but so are all the others. It's just that closing theme, playing out the whole universe.
Whatever ambitions you had for this loop, you have to let them go.
Even when you get used to the fact that you only get to live for the next 22 minutes, every 22 minutes, it's the duff of the little things, too. The thing that reminds you just how scrawny Ash Twin's gotten, how much of Brittle Hollow's made its trip to the other side.
The interloper is gone.
Yeah. How even now Dark Bramble refuses to yield to anything but itself.
And Giant Steep is just as oblivious as ever to everything.
The only time the sun sets on Giant Steep is when the sun itself is gone.
It's really weird.
The sun sets and then rises really blue!
It's like there are only 2 days on Giant Steep. but anyway, it's like, yeah, it's the one thing, even if the supernova itself cannot find you, the theme is always there when a time comes around. Except when you're at the eye of the universe and you're, out of the time loop at that point.
Yeah, I watched somebody play and they got to the eye and were on the vessel for I want to say 15 minutes walking around trying to figure out what to do, and they were almost to the point of just going well, I guess this is the end.
No matter how deep you are into anything, end times will still find you.
Even on the stranger.
Yet, at the depths of Giant Steep, on the furthest reaches of the quantum moon, in the depths of the stranger's dream, even if it's muffled and faint, you can still hear it if you're listening.
Through the infinite fractal of Dark Bramble, you can still hear it.
It's what makes it effective in its gameplay purpose. It's part of what just makes it so hauntingly beautiful. How it exactly compounds the thing you're up against this whole game. The fact that Outer Wilds does a thing that I've seen no other open world game actually be able to pull off, where it's the big thing that drives you, the big threat, actually gets to do what it's supposed to, and end the world.
And you don't feel cheated.
Yeah, they still managed to design the game around it so it doesn't invalidate the rest of your experience by having it happen.
Too true.
It's mitigated in a sense so you can keep going afterwards, but it still definitely retains its relevance and serves a gameplay purpose.
And I love the mechanic that the song provides, is no matter how focused you are on your end goal, it gives you that 5 minutes till we have to be in the car kind of thing. And then you get a chance to wrap up whatever you were going to wrap up. I mean, with all of the care of you have 3 months to live cancer diagnosis, it's this is it. What you get to do it or you got to start over. You got to be reincarnated, buddy. But it gives you a chance to wrap things up before the Nova just takes you, which I really appreciate, because can you imagine how jarring the whole game would be if all of a sudden you were working on something and then just boom, you wake up?
You hear the blast off in the distance somewhere after everything goes dark. It's hell, it beats just having a... they could have done something where maybe your suit notifies you that something's wrong, but no. It's you get this lullaby for the world's final rest.
Yeah. And I remember playing this game with you, Sackbot, for our first time playing, and I believe I knew that the sun exploded, because how I phrased it was, anytime we die, we can switch who's driving, so we could take turns that way. So I just knew that eventually you would die, and we would have pretty much equal turns. I did not know when that was gonna happen, so when we hear the music start to play, I don't quite know what it is, and I only kind of figure it out once it's over and it has such an end like that. I go wait, hey, can we look at the sun for a second?
It's the setup the whole concept of a supernova in the museum at the beginning of the game, and it was oh shit, this is happening way faster than I was expecting.
They truncated everything. So, and while it's kind of counterintuitive to talk about the rest of the soundtrack after talking about the end, but I just want to touch on the fact that there are different kinds of themes for all the Nomai places. There's one for space travel itself that's really cool. We're just highlighting the 3 biggest points for us. The whole soundtrack itself is mind-blowingly emotional. It really touches on things, and it really adds so much atmosphere to all of the spaces.
And the DLC continues that. Like, you guys know I rock out to the raft music every time it comes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that stuff in the dreams as well is chilling.
Yeah, it's like, I know the music that starts to come in when you're just, like, exploring the dream world, before all the scary stealth stuff starts. It's like, I don't remember a lot of the specifics of what it sounds like. It just really characterizes the mood.
Yeah, just a subtle, like, I'm not really supposed to be here.
One of the most alien places you get to visit. Somehow.
A miracle of imaginary science.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you play the game, revisiting the soundtrack is actually a good thing to do. To just really imagine yourself back in those places and think about how the soundtrack influenced your experience.
Definitely, shout outs to the raft theme from Echoes of the Eye. Also, just like the jarring, sort of more ambient sound that starts to play during the slide reels when you reach one of the redacted bits.
Oh, yeah. Very distorted and unsettling.
Honestly, just the implementation of the dynamic music around the slideshows was very well done. It's able to capture a lot of different appropriate moods and sync up very well to scrolling through them.
And, like, in the more normal game, like, shoutouts as well to, like, the weird quantum sounds, which are technically a song. That's very weird and alien, and that's cool. And I don't think it gets talked about enough.
Yeah. I am, definitely a enjoyer of, abstract, spooky noises. Yeah, it's also the gentle, somber sounds of the Nomai Ruins theme. Then there's, the Nomai Graveyard in Dark Bramble, my god.
Utter devastation.
Oh, I haven't paid close enough attention. Is that same theme kind of iterated in the murals that tells the story of them? It would be interesting if it was, and I wouldn't put it past the game developers to have done that. But I can't guarantee it would be.
Yeah, pretty much every episode of this so far has had something we need to go check. That might be one to look into next.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah.
It's like, even when it's a game that knowledge is the biggest thing, that unravels the whole course of the game, somehow we just keep finding things that keep calling us back to it, even after we know all the big stuff.
Meanwhile, mentioning all that's making me cry. It's like, I'm sorry, it is. It's just like, as much as I riff on and have since I played the game, you guys, the kids here, found it incredibly amusing the way I was frustrated with Nomai culture, or just this particular clan of Nomai as my experience with Nomai culture was expanded throughout the knowledge in the game. It's just like, oh my god, you idiots, why are you doing this? This is so illogical and it's so risky. What are you doing? Only to find out that yes, that very risk caused them tremendous hardship. Just tremendous hardship, and I'm upset about it. I feel stupid for being this upset about an entire branch of a fictional alien extinct race from a long time ago making bad choices for themselves and then having to suffer. Why does that evoke such emotional response for me? I can't even.
You beautiful, stupid, genius nerds.
Yes. Oh my god. How many times did I say, oh my god, you freaking Nomai?
It was a lot.
God damn Nomai!
I swear that was like one of your catchphrases when you started new loops.
Oh, I was mad. I'm so frustrated with them.
I think I also, like, unless we have more to talk about, I think, like, a good, like, final song to mention is The Big Bang.
Oh, yeah.
That, oh my god.
Since I'm already crying, sure.
It gives me fucking chills.
Remembering it gives me chills. I accidentally clicked on it today and shivered, It's it's a masterpiece of emotional manipulation through sound. It is. It's just bringing it all back together, using that theme, just changing, the production of that theme. Yeah, that motif. There we go.
Yeah. Masterful.
So grateful that it was created. I'm so grateful that I get to experience it. I'm so grateful that I got to share it with my kids, and now we get to share it again and trying to talk about it with you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. This is the conclusion of Outer Wilds August Season 2.
Well, we made it!
Thank you so much for joining us. Please do like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. This has been Collab Not Multiplayer. I'm Giggleclutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
And I'm Sackbot Barbecue.
Goodbye.
Bye!
Bye! See you next loop!